Since the timetable has been so brilliantly settled, Bishop, thank you very much for your grace. We can move on now to our first topic. And the first topic is remembering through gratitude our call to the priesthood. Remembering with gratitude our call to the priesthood. As you all know, or may not know, our annual retreat has a theme given us by the organizers, namely the challenges of the pastoral ministry in our contemporary world, the response of the modern priest. The challenges of the pastoral ministry in our contemporary world, the response of the modern priest. But today, and the whole day, I want us to concentrate on ourselves. We will come to the pastoral ministry all right from tomorrow. But today, as our bishop is saying, let us have a recollection, a concentration on our hearts, on ourselves, before our God, before we consider any other thing, where we are in this call of God to us. And that is what I'm beginning to, this morning. This afternoon I will complete it. So the first part of our recollecting ourselves is to go back, and to go back to our beginnings. The first time we felt that our lives could only be meaningfully lived if you became priests. And it wasn't a passing feeling. It was a conviction that if we did not become priests, our lives would have been wasted. That moment of coming to that realization pushed us to do certain things. And I want us to go back to those moments because they are grace-filled, where God meets an individual and places on his heart a call, waiting for an answer, just like the angel came to Mary, waiting for an answer. And under the influence of the Holy Spirit, even though we were young, we gave an answer. And that is why we are sitting here as priests. So those moments are precious. We try, those of us who are not so forgetful, to mark in some way the anniversary of our ordination to the Catholic priesthood. This is a good instinct because the beginnings of any enterprise is a very special moment, unrepeatable. In any human endeavor, there are bound to be changes over time, good or not so good developments. But the actual beginnings cannot be changed or undone. It is a giving. The only one who can transform such a past event into good is God, who is master over time. That is why God can bring good out of evil. But for us, we live under time. And whatever has passed, captured. It cannot be undone. In some ways, Scripture pays particular attention to beginnings. Genesis is a record of beginnings. The beginnings of creation, the beginnings of mankind, alas, the beginnings of evil. One cannot tell the history of any institution or event or person in midstream. It has to begin with the beginning. In many human endeavors, the beginnings are so very important in understanding a person, a situation, or an institution, even when much has changed after that beginning. In Genesis, for instance, God said, "Let there be light." And you see how light becomes an important symbol in the whole of salvation history. Because at the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." And even though you can take light to be the means by which things live, and God was creating things that could live, that light is more than giving life. It will become the Word, as St. John will say, who is light. Because such were the words of God at the beginning. And it wasn't only light, there was water at the beginning. And therefore, it will also become an important symbol in Scripture, making us baptized in water, just like the waters that flowed and the Holy Spirit hovered over them at the beginnings of creation. God so desired it. When Jesus came on earth in John's Gospel, a marvelous theologian, he will go back to the beginning and he will make his gospel sound as if there was recreation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What I'm saying, therefore, is whatever God has begun and the circumstances of it are not to be taken lightly. They are precious moments of grace when the power of God is released. And that is why, going back to our beginnings, when we heard God's call and responded, will become for us an occasion to enter deeply and prayerfully what God could be telling me today. Therefore, dear brothers, let us ask the Spirit of God to help us as we relive our vocation right from the time when it all started. We are away from the public gaze when we come to an encounter with God. Ordination, there were many there, but the very beginnings of it, it was in our heart, between us and our God, beyond the public gaze. That is when we met our God. Maybe more precious than on the ordination day. It is this same interest in the importance of the beginnings that we have as one of the well-loved readings at our ordination of First Masses, that famous passage of the call of Jeremiah, that has the unforgettable, reassuring line of God to Jeremiah: "Before I formed you, I knew you." He goes even beyond the call of Jeremiah to his birth in his mother's womb. For the grace of God at the beginning transforms an individual right as if he was being recreated, for the work of God to begin in him. Before I formed you, I knew you. Jeremiah 1:5. Another relevant text could be Isaiah. the vision of Isaiah. And Isaiah's courageous response, like you all of us have made the same thing. Here I am, send me. When Isaiah met his God in that famous vision, Isaiah 6, 1 to 10. But before these courageous words, here I am, send me, he had owned up to his own unworthiness. Woe is me, I am doomed, for I am a man of unclean lips, living among a people of unclean lips, yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. We too, at the moment of our call, could own up to our unworthiness. But we too would say, with the depth of truthfulness, my eyes have seen the King, because we knew it was God who was calling us to this ministry. The beginnings, therefore, of our ministry entail a call by God. It may not have been as dramatic as that of Jeremiah or Isaiah, but nevertheless, it was just as real and life-changing. And what we are today is due in some large measure to that call. Dear brothers, let us thank God for making us his priests. And maybe like Jeremiah, from the birth time of our mother's womb, have made a choice of us. So that no one can say, I deserved it. Because before you had life, God had made the choice. It's not what you have, what you could be, but what he desires. So that, as we were told this morning by Father, it's not you who chose me, I chose you. Indeed, in becoming aware of our call to priest, God was bringing to fulfillment his great gifts to you of faith, of trust, and of love, so that you could respond to him. But he placed all these great gifts into your heart, so that, like St. Augustine, we could say we are beggars before God. It is therefore important, as we look back to our successes and failures, achievements and growth as priests, that we never forget it was God who made the choice. And what has brought us to this point was our positive response to him. Often in our ministry, we tend to be sidestepped by too many things. But what somebody said, but what somebody did, but what appointment you had, when you forget the one who called you and fashioned you to be a priest, so that your gaze becomes distracted. Our priesthood, my dear brothers and dear friends, is the same, because there is only one priesthood, that of Jesus. So there cannot be many forms. There is only one. To show that it is not ours, we participate in it. But the circumstances of our call have been so different, and I would like to suggest may have had an impact on your subsequent priesthood. So, dear brothers, think about it. The circumstances of your call, and whether they have had any impact in the way you have lived your priesthood. And whether it has stopped you from fully living the priesthood as God intended it. We may have been quite young or not so young at the time we felt the call. We may have been living with our parents, with some others. We may have been in the primary school or secondary school or in the university or working. We may have been daily mass goers or not so frequent mass goers. We may have received support or opposition from parents, friends, siblings, or church members. In short, our call is unique to us. And in it, if you look carefully today in prayer, you might discover what God is telling you about the certain influences that you have allowed to impact your priesthood, so that it has not been just his call, you've added other things to it. We know, of course, that our call did not automatically make us priests. We had to submit to formation, mainly in the seminary, but also with our vocation directors in the diocese. They organized things for us. And we also know that unless the bishop calls us, in our case, our bishop, we cannot be a priest, no matter your call or anything. The church had to ratify that call. So we are only ordained as Catholic priests after we have accepted to undergo the requisite formation laid down by the church and to accept the church's decision. So our gift of priesthood comes through the church, and we can never ever own the priesthood as if it is a personal thing. The very circumstances, how God's call became real in your life, was mediated through the church, who calls you to serve. And we should never, ever forget that, if we are to be true to our priesthood. Yet, dear brothers, we are the best judges in assessing, first of all, the impact that formation that the church put before us made on us. And whether subsequently in living our priesthood, it had been my way or the church's way. Whether the formation continues to guide me in my life and ministry, or I have decided to take control over it and live it according to my judgment. Whether we are living our ministry in the human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral aspects as the church wants us to live it. In addition, the church puts before us ongoing formation, because the seminary is not enough. Again, if we are not careful, what the Spirit is asking the church to do in order to bring to fruition the call of God might be cut off because we decide what is important for me. If you allow the Spirit of God to guide you through all the things available to make your priesthood flourish, God will be glorified. And some of these ongoing formation programs or activities might seem a total waste of time, but please don't look at it that way. Some might be formal, some might be informal. Some might be an occasion when somebody comes to you to talk to you about an issue. Don't throw them off, because God is using the church to protect your formation, to protect your priesthood, and make it flourish. Today, let us reflect whether we allow the formation to go through us and refashion us, or we merely go through formation without it having that much impact on us. Going back to our seminary days can be useful for you, because there might be things in the seminary still hindering your full flourishing because of a remark or an event that was not pleasant that has stayed with you. Allow the Lord to take it out so that being positive, you can even bring good out of evil and release you in your memory from anything that will stop you from living your life fully. It is important, therefore, to push all your experiences in life through the crucible of faith and a personal commitment to growth in order to transform even negative experiences into something positive and life-affirming. As you reflect, therefore, on your formative journey, from the time that God placed on your heart to become a priest, through all that you went through in the seminary, all that has been in your ministry, always attend in a special way to what God is calling you to do and telling you to do today. Don't put any barrier on the possibilities that these experiences can have, in spite of it being bitter or pleasant. I would like us to reflect on one great figure in the Old Testament and how he too received a call and what became of him after saying yes to that call. I'm thinking of the story of the call of Moses through the episode of the burning bush. We know the story well enough. He is minding his own business, and then he sees the burning bush, and it is God who is using the burning bush to attract him to come closer and to have a look. And it has 3 lessons to teach us, this great episode. And I hope that you have time to read it also as you reflect on our own beginnings. The first is the lesson of conversion. The lesson of conversion. A radical change in the life of Moses. A way of living that was different. He was taken from looking after sheep, from becoming a leader, and standing up eye to eye to one great emperor, Pharaoh. He had to abandon his work as a shepherd in order to respond yes to God and undertake his mission. Just like David, who was also taken from tending sheep to lead Israel as king. And so this lesson comes to us. In responding to God's call to his priesthood, we too have to undergo the transformation of our personal values and way of life. How far have we taken on this transformation, this conversion? Through our study of Scripture, we have come to know the gospel as a way of life, not only to preach it, but to live it, to become a true disciple. That is a consequence of our response to God's call. And like Moses, unless we allow it to take full control over our lives, we will be stopping the spirit that God is using in order to carry out his mission. So, dear brothers, we have to ask ourselves constantly as we live our priesthood, whether we are guarding our way of life as priests without it becoming worldly and mixed up with all kinds of tendencies and activities, which by our own call like Moses, we had to abandon. We cannot be part-time priests, priests who just function in leading people in liturgical celebration, but as soon as we finish church, we enter into a different world, so that we can spend hours not in terms of priestly function, whether reading, study, or prayer, but something that has nothing to do with our priesthood. We must be able to be accountable to our God as the time given to us as priests, how much of it in the day we spent for him. And that is what I mean by part-time priests. You do your work, and the rest of the time is yours. We cannot also keep looking back and becoming occupied with something we have left behind when we said yes to God to become his priests. So the first lesson is, in answering the call, there is transformation, conversion. The second lesson is that of collaboration. Moses complained that he didn't have what it took to do the work. And God asked Moses to assemble the elders of Israel and go with them to Pharaoh, and also take Aaron as a special assistant. He was to be the leader, but he needed to work with others. He looked at his own circumstances and was not sure at all about the success of his mission. He was a refugee, a fugitive. He was not sure at all about his ability to speak. And that is where God says, you can find support among your elders and even Aaron. So also, when we become priests, there are priests who are older, just as we are also older than others. And all that they have experienced can be at our help and assistance as we also learn the first steps to a ministry. And therefore, let us make good use of all that is available in this priesthood. And that is what we call the elders, collaboration, fellow feeling, sharing, solidarity. That is how God intended our ministry. It's not a personal thing, my alone, answering God's call, but it is in the context of a presbytery. Some older, some younger. The enormity of our mission requires that we enrich each other with our gifts and experiences. So like Moses, let us continually seek to work within the priestly fraternity, giving and receiving from one another. Finally, we note the lesson of a close union with God. You notice that they all have C: conversion, collaboration, close relationship with God. The God who called Moses and commissioned him was to be a God so close to Moses. Moses was to develop a relationship with God. The enormity of his task required that he will be constantly in the presence of God, telling him how he's doing, the problems he's having, and receiving from God new directions, new strength in order to go on. So he will spend hours in the tent speaking to God, as scripture will say, even face to face. In other words, Moses made his ministry dependent on a constant reference of his life to his God. Moses therefore accepted he was only an instrument. The work was the Lord's. It was the Lord was to bring the people out, not him. He was just to be a communicator of the wishes of the Lord to his people. It is God himself who oversees the work and brings it to perfection. And so we are all reminded in our ordination, may the Lord who began this good work in you bring it to a perfect end. He will bring it if we allow him. When we get to know that the heart of our ministry is a master, that we have to build our lives with. And as our dear Pope, St. John Paul II said, we cannot be so busy with the work of the Lord that we forget the master of the work. What a great example he has given us of a person in love with God, a contemplative in action, a man you saw at prayer and no one told you he was in communion with his master. It is he who said that priests should be teachers of prayer. But we cannot be teachers of prayer unless we have undergone, under the influence of the Spirit, a training to be constantly with the Lord, as Moses found in his work. Building a close relationship with God maintains the lordship of God over our lives and our work. In the seminary, we are given the opportunity to fervently cultivate a deep spiritual life based on our daily participation in the Eucharist, the praying of the office, meditation every morning. These are precious things, and the evil one will tell you they are not necessary because they constitute your weapon against all his wiles. As one young priest told me, anytime I stop praying my office, things don't go well. He has come to know the power of prayer in this ministry, which is truly a divine action in the very bones of human flesh. Dear brothers, the burning bush has another lesson, the final one, to teach us. What God used to get Moses' attention and attract him to approach him was the burning bush. As Moses said to himself, I must go over to look at this remarkable sight, to see why the bush is not burnt. Moses was fascinated. He was restless in his soul. His whole being was engaged when he saw the burning bush. It was not a dull moment. We can therefore ask ourselves today, what is it about the priesthood that attracted us to seek God and discern whether he was calling us? And has that attraction, that fascination, stayed with us? Or have we allowed things to cloud over it so that we seem not to see with the eyes of faith the remarkable thing about God taking possession of your life and knowing that he's the center of everything you are? That attraction, that to do anything for God is worth everything of my life. Over time, has that attraction, that zeal, that fascination with God died out? Has it been changed into another thing? Has something else taken its place? Because in life, there are many idols. Things that would like to take the place of God. So the burning bush was God's way of making Moses concentrate on him. May what has brought you to the ministry stay and grow and become even more powerful. That is why St. Paul would tell Timothy, fan into flame, fan it into flame, let it burn. The grace that was given you when I laid my hands on you. May your burning bush remain constantly the means by which you are refreshed and renewed. Dear brothers, then, let us continue to thank God for bringing us into this ministry. And may these days he has called us here together be a time which our dear Holy Father will say to us, start afresh from Jesus. I always end with a short prayer together. So if you don't mind, if you will sit back, just add in position a little bit and let your feet rest on the ground. Just let's spend a few moments together in silent prayer.